Hello, my name is Lexi Davis. I'm a self-discovery coach, a yoga and meditation instructor, a love enthusiast, and a really playful human being. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this is Heart Snuggles, a holistic wellness podcast where I invite guests to drop into their heart space through authentic conversations and compassionate intentions, all in mini cuddly episodes, hoping that you connect to your truth in the most authentic version of yourself. I hope you enjoy. Welcome everyone to Heart Snuggles. So happy you're here today. And I brought on a teacher / mentor of mine. I'm so excited to share. So Nicole, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Straight into the introduction. Oh, where do I even start? Lifelong story. Ultimately, I am Nicole Lohse. I am many things, but from a mentor perspective, I guess I'll speak there first. So I'm a Somatic Experiencing Practitioner, a Feldenkrais Practitioner, and a yoga practitioner. What all those words mean is ultimately I love to geek out about the body and understand our physiology and understand who we are and how we show up in the world in relationship to our survival patterns and our trauma from a nervous system perspective. So that's kind of where I'm coming at and how I'm showing up today. And I'm sure I'm many other things, and that might be revealed as we have a conversation.
Perfect. Thank you. I know that question's always so hard. It's like, well, I could go on forever if you really
Totally. It's like, who are you? Who are you really? Like, well, can I sit with that for a moment? Because I think I'm trying to, this will be a lifelong journey to figure that one out.
Definitely. So I like to start the podcast with a question. What was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Put me on the spot. It's interesting that it's taking me a moment to even think about one. Yeah, it definitely makes me think, what is a random act of kindness? Because I think even just an acknowledgement and a smile is a random act of kindness. So I want to even leave it as that simple, because I think I'm thinking too hard on like this actual event. And I think even just a question or a smile in a specific way can be a random act of kindness. So what I'm landing on is I'm currently navigating online dating and that fun journey. And two different people asked me similar questions that to me landed me in the experience of kindness. And the question was, share some pictures of things that bring you joy. And that made me really reflect on the things that bring me joy. So although it's just a question, it to me invokes kindness, both to myself and to the development of the relationship. And the other person asked something similar, like, what was something recently that you've done was fun? And it's that same thing. It's the kindness that can come from our questions, because it allows us to drop into an inquiry, much like your question of like, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for me? Right? So it's more the experience of connection and the experience of kindness and being seen and having someone hold space for you as you navigate the answer to what it feels like to experience kindness. So although that doesn't really answer the question specifically, that's what showed up for me. So I'm going to roll with that.
No, that's perfect. It's funny because when you hear that, you immediately like your brain's like, what was the last big thing someone did for me? Like who paid for my this, or like who, went out of their way. But it's truly like those little moments. And that's why I like asking that, so we can remember those little things. And no one's ever said that. And I think that's so beautiful about the questions, because you can feel when someone is like really wants to hear your response, and like that's such a thoughtful question, and it really makes a difference, instead of just like, how are you, which can be nice, but it's so not really anymore. So that's amazing. I love that act of kindness.
Yeah. It's fun because now I'm thinking of other little ones too. And I'm like, oh, it's such, again, so here's a beautiful example of like how an inquiry that someone's asking that asks you to inquire allows a deeper connection. And that to me is kindness. Yeah.
My favorite. I love that.
Yeah.
Yay. So I know that nervous system is becoming bigger, like people are starting to hear about it and it's almost becoming a buzzword, but I would love for you to explain like what the nervous system is, just like in simple terms to someone who might not really understand what it is.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting how it is becoming such a big buzzword right now because it's a fully loaded thing. Our nervous system ultimately, is the communication in between our brain and our body and our body and our brain. And there's so much at play there. And I find it, sometimes I even laugh at how everyone's so excited about the nervous system. And there's a real depth to understanding what's going on there. So for me, in the work I do, I put a lot of focus on the autonomic nervous system. So there's a lot of different branches of the nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system is more responsible for survival. So the more we can support ourselves in understanding our survival physiology and understand what's happening from a survival perspective, the more we can have a deeper sense of our trauma. And we'll get into, I'm sure, what all of this is in more detail in a moment, but we can get more into our understanding of our trauma, how we're showing up in our survival patterns, how we're showing up in general. And by paying attention to the language of our nervous system, the language specifically around our nervous system in response to survival, we can learn a lot more about ourselves. So the nervous system isn't just this communicating system in between our brain and our body and our body and our brain. It has a lot to do with, okay, how am I navigating what's happening in my life? So when I'm chilling with some friends and I'm relaxing and I'm outside eating some food and just enjoying company, I'm going to be in a very different state when it comes to survival than when I'm writing an exam or writing a test or having to do a presentation, or when I'm out for a run, or when I wake up in the morning, or if I'm sitting in meditation. My nervous system is constantly sending messages relative to what I'm doing and what's happening in the environment to let me register if I'm safe or not. So the job of the autonomic nervous system is to really give messages to the brain and the body around, am I safe or do I need to respond to danger? So there's a few branches. We can totally geek out into the layers of the autonomic nervous system just briefly, where there's a few branches of the autonomic nervous system that people love to talk about. One is the sympathetic nervous system, and that nervous system is responsible for the messages that tell the brain to move more into action or being in a fight flee response. Ultimately, it's like, okay, how can I be more active, like going for a run, or how can I take action and fight and flee to protect myself? So that's more the sympathetic branch. The other branch is the parasympathetic branch, which branches out into two branches just to make it a little confusing. But the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for resting and digesting and recovering. That's the dorsal vagal nerve. And then the other branch is your ventral vagal nerve, which is another hot word right now, which is all about social engagement, connection, feeling safe. And what's important to recognize is, yes, we're talking about three different branches here, but they're always at play. There's this dance that's constantly going on. It's not that one's on and one's off. I'm in fight mode and that's it, that's all. It's like, oh, I might be in fight mode, but I also might still feel some connection with the person. Let's say I'm having an argument where there's that fight energy, but I still feel connected to the environment. I still feel connected to the person. Or I could be relaxing out on that picnic, but also engaging with friends. So there's a full range of how we're experiencing ourselves. And why I find it so important to pay attention to these different states is we can recognize when we are in certain states when we don't necessarily need to be. So the more we can pay attention, like, oh, I'm relaxing with some friends here, but I'm feeling super anxious and I'm feeling this active energy here. That's actually my sympathetic system, like on, and there's this alertness and this fuzziness and this hypervigilance, and I'm experiencing it as anxiety, yet I'm safe. My mind knows I'm safe and I'm connecting with friends here, but I'm experiencing something other than what is necessarily appropriate for the situation. And the cause of that is our trauma. I'll pause there and have a breath.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love you. Always explain everything so it's really easy to understand. And I value you for that. And I think it's so fascinating. Yeah, just it's that I love how this work is healing through just like observing what is and not needing to like get to the bottom of anything or like, fix something. And you talk about not fixing a lot, which I think has been one of the most revolutionary things for me. So maybe we can go into that and then we can circle back to the trauma.
Perfect. Awesome. I love it. I find our society is so focused on finding the answer. I mean, if you scroll Instagram right now, everything is like, okay, these 3 steps, or, go on YouTube and it's like, watch this video to help your anxiety. And they're all steps and tools to help you fix what you're experiencing. That's how we've come to approach our healing. Like, how can we understand it? How can I read the books? How can I watch the videos? How can I take the courses even, right? And give me the tools to fix it. And it drives me crazy, to be honest, because we just end up getting in our own way. So that's why I find the more we recognize our survival patterns of wanting to gain control, wanting to understand, wanting to fix, the more we can recognize that, yeah, they have value. And, reading the books and getting the information and knowing some tools is really important. And the more that these needs to have control and to fix and to understand can soften back a little, the more we can learn to get to know ourselves and what we're actually experiencing. Because our body has so much to share with us. Like, we are a whole human experience with a whole lot of things going on. Nervous system responses being one of them, right? And the more we can pay attention to what is going on for us, the more we can get curious and inquire what else is possible. The more we can untangle the messes, the more we can piece together the puzzle to really support what wants to happen in our body, which didn't get to happen before, or the more we can really recognize, wait, this feels more authentic, whereas this feels more like a survival pattern. This feels more like, ooh, okay, yeah, I'm protecting myself here, or I'm containing my experience here, or I'm putting on a mask here, right? So the more we just recognize what is, the more we can really get to know who we are and inquire from there with curiosity, and becomes more playful. It's less serious. It's less like something's wrong with me and I'm broken and I have to fix it. And it's more like, oh, I'm whole and I can access the self energy and recognize, like, oh, here I am. And I'm doing this to protect myself. And I'm doing this to keep myself small because I don't feel safe. Like, great. How can we befriend all these survival patterns we have? And then navigate what needs some support and some exploration that is influencing why those patterns are there.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it just feels so nice. It's like a huge weight off your shoulder, because when I started getting into this work, I'm like, oh, I have to fix things for the rest of my life. Like, I am messed up. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm fucked. But then it's like, no, this is just like, yeah, how can I really just integrate all these parts of myself that I've just been pushing away? And I'm kind of the problem myself now. Like, I'm
getting in my own way.
Yes, it's obviously the external circumstances, but yeah, just remembering that you have the power to choose that you are whole in this moment, and it's so empowering. And I love too that you've taught from bottom up processing, I think it's called. So because when you're saying that, you're like, how do I accept what is? It's because we're like, for instance, you're starting to feel an emotion, like someone said something that made you really triggered or upset. And then you start going into your mind, and you're like, well, I shouldn't feel this way, or blah, blah, blah. But how can we move from that mind to like, oh, wait, there's something happening in my body. That's what I should be with.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that's the inquiry that I would like to invite as many people as possible to make, is to be able to distinguish when you're coming more from top down, your head making a decision to guide you in your explorations, versus bottom up, where the body is giving you insight into what it's experiencing, and you can follow it and discover what else is possible through the body. So the first piece is to recognize how you approach any discomfort, right? As soon as we experience discomfort, chances are you want to change it. So there's that I want to fix piece, right? So top down would be, okay, I'm having this conversation with someone and they confront me about something, and all of a sudden I notice my heart going faster, my chest tightening, and my spine goes rigid. And wait, nope, they're safe. I'm going to tell myself I'm safe. I'm going to take deep breaths. I'm going to feel my feet on the ground. I'm going to remind myself, okay, I got this. Those are all top-down techniques because I am influencing my experience by guiding myself into something. That's very different than when we notice, oh, I've got this tightening in my chest and my heart's beating faster and my eyes are wanting to dart around and my spine's tightening. The more we can recognize, like, ooh, I'm moving into some sort of response here. My physiology is changing. Do I have space to get curious about that? And this is the tricky thing because when we're in the heat of the moment, often we don't. When we have more capacity, we can. The more we learn to pay attention to the language of our nervous system and our physiology, then we can notice the subtle changes as soon as they happen, and we can support ourselves sooner. But when we're deep in our experience, it's hard to navigate that. So my invitation in those types of situations is start by at least noticing what's happening in the body and see what it's like not to implement one of these more top down, I'm going to change my influence my experience, even if it's for a split second longer. Because you might be surprised as you notice the tightness in the chest and your heart beating faster and your spine bracing and your eyes darting around as this person's confronting you. You might also notice something else that allows you to actually be in the experience and move through it. And you end up being able to be in the situation in a very different way because you're not triggered and activated and you're actually moved through that experience and you're more there, present, embodied, ready to prove your points from maybe a more authentic place. Chances are survival patterns will come in, but that's part of the journey, right? Is at least by having the awareness of it, then we can start to get curious. Then, if we're not in the heat of it all, can we take a moment to reflect? Can I get to know what showed up for me? So what's amazing is our body, other than our higher brain, doesn't have a sense of time. So by reflecting on a situation, we have endless opportunity to kind of like pause the scene and notice, okay, as I'm reflecting, am I also noticing the tightness in my chest right now? And am I noticing my spine starting to go a bit more rigid? Oh, okay, how can I get curious about what's happening and follow it or inquire about what else is going on that I wasn't aware of in the moment? So I'm gaining more information about what's happening in my physiology and what wants to unwind or undo or be moved through. And sometimes it sounds like too simple and we're looking for a more complicated answer on what to do. But it's pretty amazing when we just pause and be with our experience, what happens. And I mean, you're welcome to share your experience around that because I know you've played with that.
It's crazy. I was blown away, especially, one of the first times you guided me. I didn't realize that it's that simple. And as soon as you just be with it, how quickly it shifts and it wants to move through you. Like the energy is there because it's trying to come out. And usually when I feel something, I'm like, shut down, let me stop that sensation. I immediately want to stop it. But when I can just allow it, it so quickly moves through me and maybe it'll move to a different part of my body and then I'll be with that part and then it'll completely release. And it's just a really beautiful practice. And I still, to this day, even knowing it, I have to remind myself because I've conditioned myself so much to not sit and just be, that it is a practice and it's worth practicing though, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. At least having the awareness of like, oh, look at how often I implement these tools that I've learned that influence my experience. Whoa, I do that a lot. Okay, how can I do this a little less? Because they're not, when we do that, I often talk about riding waves, where it's like, okay, I'm activated and I'm pulling in one of these ways I've taught to self-soothe myself, or to bring me back down, or to distract myself or numb. We've got lots of ways of surviving uncomfortable situations. But it's kind of like I'm in this activated place and now I'm going to pull myself out of it. That's not really healing much. That's just encouraging the pattern to keep repeating, or encouraging us to just keep showing up in the same way. Situation happens again and boom, I'm activated in the exact same way. But when we learn to pause and support and hold what is, when we move through an experience and we ride the wave of it, we naturally, like, energy just wants to move. It's energy in motion. Our emotions, our experiences is all just energy in motion. So when we move through it like that, we've actually healed a layer or an aspect of our trauma that's causing us to respond and be triggered by these certain situations. So we can have endless layers, but it's important to give ourselves the opportunity to ride through these aspects and to have our system recognize, wait, something else is possible here. I don't have to be uncomfortable and then pull in one of my survival patterns. I can actually be in the discomfort, move through it, and I'm okay. I survived. And okay, next time that happens, oh, weird. Now it's different. I'm responding differently. There's more capacity there. I'm able to find my voice a bit more. I'm able to show up more authentically instead of freeze and freak out, right? Or want to run away, whatever it is. So it's simple, yet so complex and so important. And I find that that knowledge is missing in so many modalities. So even though people are gaining more awareness of their nervous system, the missing piece to me is the recognition of how to listen and support what is, instead of pulling in these endless tools or survival patterns or coping mechanisms that just don't allow the healing and the increase of capacity that our nervous system is designed to have.
Yes, I'm seeing that everywhere now. It's like, do it shaking or do your breathing. And I mean, I remember when I first found those, they really helped me. And I wasn't realizing that like you're saying, I wasn't actually moving through the layers and moving through the activation. And I'm just constantly seeing the tools out now. And I haven't heard anyone else talking about like just sitting and being with it. And so this information is so important. And
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And not to say that, maybe for some people, so breath work, for example, can be a really powerful tool when the capacity is there and there's no trauma around it. So for me, for example, if we use breath work as an example, as a surfer, as a swimmer, I've got some trauma around near death, drowning stuff for sure. So when I do breath work, it's actually too stimulating for my system. And it doesn't even have to be that you have experience around drowning. It could just be that something around breathing triggers the nervous system in a way where it's like, whoa, this reminds me of a time where I almost died and this is too much for me. And now I'm going to start freezing or shutting down or dissociating. So a breathwork practice isn't at all supportive for me. But if someone doesn't have a connection into breath work being triggering for the nervous system and sending them into an old survival an old trauma, then breath work can be super powerful, right? So it's important to recognize that there's so many valuable practices out there to explore, but that's why the foundation of knowing your nervous system, understanding how to listen to your physiology, understanding what's a survival pattern versus who am I authentically? The more that becomes clear, you can approach all these practices in a way where it's like, oh, I know myself and I know where my edges are and I know where it's okay to kind of hang out and get uncomfortable. And I know when something's just taking me deep into an old trauma or old way of surviving and I'm just now shutting down and I'm out.
So good. Yeah, I remember asking you during the group coaching program, I was like, I can't take a cold shower. I just don't know why. Everyone's telling me I need to do it, and I've tried to force myself, and it just doesn't work for me. And what you were just saying, it's like knowing your body, and it's okay if that isn't working for you. Like, not every tool needs to work for you, and that's liberating in itself as well.
I agree. Yeah, that cold shower one is a great example too. Like, ooh, cold water, that equals shut down, like freeze all the things. Let's send ourselves into this shutdown state. Like, no thanks. And for some people, again, that's supportive when there's capacity online and there's regulation online and they don't have trauma associated to the system wanting to right away freeze. And it's like, okay, great, have fun. I'm not joining you in that. Thank you very much. Yet, who knows, you know?
Yes. Yes, for sure. And so now we'll circle back to the trauma. And I would love for you to talk about how trauma isn't the experience, but you being stuck in the survival pattern.
Mm-hmm. So when we hear the word trauma, we often think of all these traumatic events that happen. And then it's very easy to be like, oh, I don't have trauma. Nothing's happened to me. And it's important to recognize that trauma isn't about the event. Trauma is about how we didn't get to complete our response to the event. So when we experience something that's a threat, we want to move through the experience of that fight flee energy and realize that we escaped and we're okay. If we experience anything, so let's even say a car accident where I'm driving and all of a sudden I have to slam on the brakes because the car in front of me slammed on their brakes and I hit that person, I'm already going to be sympathetically activated because I'm moving in response to the alertness of their brakes and me holding onto the steering wheel tightly and me looking in the rearview mirror as I brace for impact of the car behind me, right? If when that happens, I give myself the space to notice when I'm okay afterwards, and this could be, you know, hours later when I finally get home after the chaos of dealing with the car insurance and dealing with getting my car towed and all those fun things. It's not until I realize that I'm okay, that my system shifts out of that on sympathetic energy, that I'm like, oh, okay. And yeah, I might have some whiplash from the impact, but I'm not still bracing. I'm not still anticipating someone's coming from behind me or holding my steering wheel really tight. I'm able to just land and like, oh, I'm safe. I'm back in community. I'm back in connection with my friends, my family, or my pet and nature. And oh, okay, I'm okay. That's ideally what would happen. But when we have trauma, we're stuck still believing that something is happening. So there can be many points where we get stuck within our trauma. It's called getting stuck somewhere in the threat response cycle. So when we see something that's about to happen, or when we sense that something is shifting and we're maybe at threat, we move into more of an alert state. So let's use a car example. I'm driving and I see the lights of the car in front of me turn red. I'm going to turn into more of an alert state and into that more sympathetic on energy where it's like, okay, how do I need to react to this situation? I'm not thinking about it. My body's responding off of instincts and impulses. Okay, red light equals I need to slow down. Okay, I'm slowing down. I'm starting to grip my steering wheel a little bit more. I'm starting to brace. I'm getting ready. Okay, and now I could get stuck there. Or maybe I'm stuck like constantly looking around, like looking in my rearview mirror, or looking and waiting for that person that's coming behind me to also be like coming at me. So that's kind of like the beginning stages when we move from alertness. We then also might have some hypervigilance in there. We may still have some sense of like, say the accident happened without me knowing, then I could be stuck in more of a startle response. Or I'm stuck in my car and I can't escape. And then I'm going to have more of this fight flee energy that's there that wants to take action. And I could be stuck in that. Or I totally shut down and I didn't know what to do and I'm stuck in shutdown. Because shutdown happens when everything becomes too much. We freeze, we put the brakes on everything, and we don't feel any of that fight flee energy or that alert energy. So if I was in a car accident, it could have even been super mild, but now 1 year later, I still don't like driving, or I avoid that road that I had the accident on, or I find when I'm holding my steering wheel for whatever reason, my hands are really tight and my eyes are always darting around and I'm anticipating another car coming to hit me, or if someone, any brake sends me straight into this, like I really have to slam on my brakes. So we are stuck believing that something is still happening, and we can be stuck in so many different ways. And we live our life then still stuck believing that that danger is happening. So it might show up just in the car, or it might show up as whiplash that never seems to heal because my whole body is still bracing in anticipation for getting hit by the car behind me. Or, there's so many factors of what can show up. And I'm just using a car accident as an example. But ultimately, it's us stuck still trying to survive. And my example I'm giving here is a shock trauma. So an event that happened that was a one-time thing that led to me being stuck trying to survive a situation. It's also important to recognize there's all kinds of different types of trauma. Like I may have experienced developmental trauma, where in my earlier years, when my brain and my body were still developing, something sent me into a threatened state where I had to move more into survival. And then I learned to live from that place, right? So it could be as simple as, right? Honestly, most of the world. I'll put the word most there in front of that. It could be, as an infant, I was left to cry in my crib. Oh, I can't escape. I can't fight or flee. I'm learning to, instinctually, I make sounds in hopes that a caregiver comes. They don't come. What am I going to eventually do? Shut down. So now I'm teaching my nervous system that anytime something is difficult and stressful, I need to shut down. So that becomes the learned way to survive in the world. And now I'm 35 years old, and anytime there's emotions that arise and then something's intense, I just put on the brakes and I shut everything down. Why would I feel that? I never felt that, right? That could be another example. Or maybe there was some trauma in the birth, or there wasn't the bonding with the caregiver, or there was a lot of noise in the family and a lot of yelling, and I always had to stay small and hide, right? There's all these ways that we've had to learn to survive the world, and our nervous system believes that there's still a threat, so we live from that place. And it's until we support the systems to recognize, like, wait, this is how I keep showing up in response to a threat or a danger. How can I inquire about what wants to happen that didn't get to happen, so that I can land in recognizing I'm in less danger, working towards experiencing I'm actually safe in the world. It's okay to connect with other human beings, right? There's so much there that as we untangle how we're showing up, both in our survival patterns and our trauma. So I see survival patterns slightly different. I see survival patterns as ways that we protect ourselves where from experiencing the trauma ultimately, or feeling the layers of the trauma. And then the trauma is us stuck, still trying to survive. So the more we untangle the ways we've learned to survive through our patterns and the ways we are stuck in our threat response cycle, the more we can access who we really are. So that was a long-winded answer to what is trauma. And just there's so much more.
Yeah, we could talk about any of these things for hours. But I think that's really, really great too, that it's like teaching your body there's another way to live. And that's really important for me, because in those moments, you don't think there's any other way to react or to be. And once you can bring that curiosity, it's so healing and transformational.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I know I've been struggling to find inner peace lately, and thankfully I discovered Open, a mindfulness studio for everyone. As a yoga teacher, it's been difficult to find an online studio that actually shifts my well-being, and wow, let me tell you, Open transforms your mind through body and breath in an immersive space designed to take you to the here and the now, no matter where you are or where you begin. Open offers live and on-demand breathwork, meditation, yoga, and Pilates guided by the leaders in mindfulness, centered on music and rooted in community. Hello, two of my favorite things. And their aesthetics are on point. So as always, I'm getting you the best of the best. So I got you 30 days free. Just use the code HeartSnuggles and let your ritual begin now.
I think that curiosity is one of my favorite words, right? Like bringing it back to pausing and noticing. How do I notice what it is I'm experiencing? And then becoming aware of what that is and being curious about what else is possible. Like just those 4 pieces of being able to pause. What am I noticing? Becoming more aware and becoming more curious. Those 4 pieces added to there's nothing to fix and you're already whole. It's amazing things can happen. It's so simple, yet so profound when we really land in it.
Yeah. When you get to experience it for the first time, or anytime I experience it, I'm like, wow. And I'd love for you to, one time you guided me on holding multiple parts of myself in one experience. And that was really crazy for me as well, to like feel an activation and feel this and feel that, and like all these parts of me in a situation.
Yeah. I think the easiest way maybe for people to experience that would be if you think of one of your survival patterns. So one of the ways you protect yourself, just take a moment and reflect on that. And let's say if you want to even share one, I'll use yours as a demonstration, but invite everyone else to just think of one of your survival patterns. How do you protect yourself? How do you keep yourself, air quotes, safe so that you don't have to be uncomfortable ultimately? Can you think of one?
Being quiet and not speaking up about something.
Perfect. Awesome. So that's the survival pattern, right? So the survival pattern and the parts that are at play is like to stay quiet, to not speak up. And my sense is there would also be a part that wants to speak up, but something's kind of dampening it, correct? Mm-hmm. So there's a part that wants to speak up, but then there's another part that wants to stay quiet and wants to not say something. Then you can also inquire, like, how do you feel that in your body? When you want to speak up, but you don't, how do you feel that in your body?
It just feels like a constriction.
Yeah.
Like around my throat or my heart.
Yeah. So that here's the awareness of the survival pattern and then how it's showing up in the physiology. This constriction in the chest, in the heart, in the throat. Some people might experience themselves as like feeling stuck or feeling small, right? We can really inquire to like, how do I experience myself in this survival pattern? So you know the aspects that are at play. And this is where the wholeness piece comes into play. So when we're working with our survival patterns, we can very easily get caught up in them. And that's where fixing or trying to control can be really helpful, because it's like, why would I want to be stuck in my survival pattern? I want this to be different, damn it. Right? So what I like to play with in this context is like, okay, draw a circle. You can just imagine a circle and see that circle as you in your survival pattern. So you're getting to know it a little bit more. There's the quality of not speaking up. There's this sensation in the throat, tightness around the heart, maybe a sense of being small or not wanting to move, wanting to stay hidden, whatever it is for everyone. Getting to know that quality, yet there's a part of you that's whole. So imagine a small part in that big circle. You could even draw a small circle in that big circle that represents you and your wholeness. Now, when we're in that, it can be quite intense because there's a lot at play. When you switch it and you draw another big circle, or imagine another big circle, and that big circle represents you and your wholeness, or you and your self energy, you and your authentic self, however you want to word it. But to keep it simple, that big circle represents you and your wholeness. And now draw a smaller circle inside and let that represent the survival pattern that you have, that you've adapted to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself protected, to ultimately survive probably a lifetime of living. And notice the difference when you hold the survival pattern in the wholeness versus when you associate yourself as the survival pattern with a small circle being the wholeness. What's your experience around that?
It feels completely different. Like I feel like I'm wrong. There's something, I'm broken when I am not the wholeness. And I feel like, everything just kind of crumbles around me. But when I am the wholeness and I feel this part of me, I'm just like, oh, that is a part of me, but it isn't all of me.
Mm-hmm. And we can hold ourselves so differently when we can access that, right? And to be clear, for some people, you might not have experienced that, right? Wholeness might be a foreign concept, or maybe it's an idea, but there isn't an embodied experience of it. I would invite you to get curious just within this circle exercise. Do it a few times, like keep inquiring, because you are already whole. We're all whole. And yeah, we have these fragmentations, we have these parts, we have these ways that we've learned to survive in the world, and they've played really important roles in keeping us safe, keeping us protected, allowing us to navigate the obstacles and the hardship of life. So the more we can hold them from a place of wholeness, like, hey, I see you in your value. I appreciate you. Maybe I even have some compassion towards you, depending on your experience, right? And I'm curious about you. Compared to when we see ourselves as our survival patterns, we get caught up and yeah, I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. No one loves me. I don't belong. How do I fix this? Give me the answers, right? So it's such a simple shift in our experience, yet the more we can hold ourselves and each other from this place of wholeness, the world will be a very different place.
That would be magic.
Right? I agree.
I think it's possible. Something else that I was thinking about is the word control, because I don't think people really understand. I guess I should speak for myself. When I first heard control, I was like, I'm not controlling. Like, that's mean people, But can you kind of explain what controlling looks like?
Yeah, I mean, controlling can look like so many things. How I see control is it's a way to feel like I have the ability to be in charge of the situation so that I can feel, air quotes, safer. So it's a really strong, important survival pattern that really gives us the perception that we have the upper hand and we can kind of be in, I'm trying not to use the word control, be in be in influence of the situation so that I don't have to feel the discomfort, or so I don't have to feel what emotions are really there, or so I don't have to feel anything ultimately. So control is such a big one. And for some people, that's their go-to survival pattern. And for others, it's like, whatever, I don't need anything and I'm fine. I mean, I come from a I'm fine family, so I know that one well. It's like, I'll just go with the flow, right? That's another survival pattern where I don't need any control. It'll just go as it'll go and be as it'll be. So there's all these different ways we survive, and I often see it as a spectrum. Some people lean more towards one end. For example, in this situation, I have control, so I'm okay. Other people are like, whatever, it's all good, and I'm okay. And I'm always curious of like, what's the mid-range and what is the experience that's like, I'm here, I'm embodied, and I know this to be true and right for me, versus I'm feeling a little floaty and I'm in this, I'm fine, nothing bugs me, or I'm in this total contraction and control, and I feel like I need to be in this power to survive. And again, that's why learning to listen to our body, learning to listen to the responses of our nervous system and what's happening for us really provides us with the insight into how we show up, whether we're more on the control side or more on the whatever side.
Yeah, I feel like I've been on both ends of that spectrum,
right?
For sure.
Totally.
Yeah, I used to definitely be more on the floaty, like I don't feel sad ever, just completely disconnected from my emotions. So yeah, it's really interesting. And that kind of brings up this authenticity piece. And I love how you've shown me and myself and others in the group how there's a difference between the true authenticity and like the survival, what we think is authentic. It's like you kind of got a full window of tolerance, I think was another term too.
Yeah, totally. So when we're in our window of tolerance or our window of capacity, I'm going to describe it in a way where it's like how do I feel in it? Right? So when we're in our window, let's call it window to keep it simple, if I feel myself present with my experience and present in my body, then I know I'm in my window. So even though there may be obstacles that come my way, or something sends me into experiencing anger because a boundary was crossed, or into sadness or grief because something happened, it doesn't mean that I'm not in my window and showing up authentically. I'm navigating whatever is changing in my life and inside of me relative to what's happening around me and inside of me. So there's this constant adaptation. Welcome to being human. When I'm not in that window, I'm often caught up in feeling disconnected from myself, or a lack of control, or overwhelmed, or shut down. And that's when I'm out of my window. I'm either like, ooh, responding out of chaos, or responding out of shutdown, or not responding at all because I'm shut down. Now, what can happen is we can think we're doing pretty good, but we're actually just living from a disconnected place. So that's where the faux window of tolerance comes in, or the faux sense of capacity, where it's like, I think I'm doing fine, but it's actually not really aligning with me feeling my experience. So it may feel like you have the capacity to do anything, yet you don't feel much. Right. So I'm living my life, I'm navigating what's showing up, but I'm living it from that I'm fine place, for example. So it looks like I'm doing well. It looks like I've got a pretty big window of tolerance and I've got the capacity for all these things, but I'm really disconnected from myself. And I'm living more in this often airy place where I'm not really in my body. And all I am feeling is like, yeah, it's good. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's fine. Right. Or I'm living in that window from a very controlled place where it's like, I'm still disconnected from my body. I have no sense of what's actually happening for me, but I'm really successful. I run multiple businesses. I make 6 figures, 7 figures even. I have lots of friends. I'm invited to all the parties. It looks like I've got my shit together and I've got a lot of capacity. Yet I'm totally disconnected from myself. And for some reason, I have cancer. And what the hell's that all about? Right. And oh, weird. All of a sudden, I have a midlife crisis. What's that all about? So it's important to recognize we may feel like we have capacity to navigate all that's happening in our life. But what I invite you to inquire into is like, well, are you even aware of what you're experiencing? Are you even able to feel your feet on the ground? Or do you even have legs? Do they even feel like they're part of you? And that's the telltale sign for me is I feel so much, but I can usually tell by how embodied someone is. And I think that's the other missing link to so many practices right now is the information is being gained, the knowledge is out there. Like there's so many incredible resources out there. But the question is, are you embodying what you know? Are you integrating and feeling the knowing of these aspects that you're learning about? Or is it just feeding that mind that loves to have control, that loves to have everything all together or be fine, and you're not actually embodying what it is you know to be true? So the more I can feel that people are in their body and really know the material at a cellular level, or know themselves at a cellular level, that's true capacity. That's authenticity. That's living in your living from wholeness and living from who you truly are and living from self-energy instead of survival patterns galore.
Yeah, I think it's really, I still, I'm still integrating a lot. And I think that it's really brought this like calm sense of like this calm confidence where I know more parts of myself and I'm not ashamed of them, or I'm not like, pushing them away or trying to hide them. And it's like, the more I integrate, the more I'm just like, I've got myself. I feel good. Like I accept myself. And it's really a beautiful process.
I agree. And I can feel that change in you. So it's been really cool to be part of this journey with you and to feel that shift. If you like, the best way I can describe it is like landing in self more, and like that ability to take up space from an authentic place instead of take up space from more of a survival pattern, or to hide from a survival pattern, right? One end or the other end. That's something I've really felt in you, is you landing more in yourself in this present, authentic way. It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much. I have two things I want to say about that. Can you give people an example of how that looks different? And then I would love to talk about, since I was in your group coaching program, like how community is such a beautiful way to, an essential way to healing the nervous system.
What do you mean by how it looks different? For you?
That taking up, it doesn't have to be for me. It can if you want, but
taking up space
in general.
Okay, yeah. Cool. The taking up space piece. Perfect. So yeah, the taking up space piece is a great exploration to make. So even notice, like with me saying, what does it feel like to take up space? What happens in your body? You know, is there this like, yeah, let me take up space. Hell yeah, I'm here. Let's do this. Let's conquer the world. I'm self-righteous and I'm ready, right? Or is it like, ugh, shivers up my spine, take up space? No thanks, let me hide. And we can have both experiences, to be clear, right? So when we think of taking up space, for me, when I think about it, my shoulders start to broaden a little, my chest lifts a little, and you can hear my voice. I just dropped into my belly a little bit more. And there's this sense of like, ooh, I'm here. But I can also move more into the self-righteous, fuck you, taking up space energy, which is more of a survival pattern. And that feels different, right? I'm talking a bit faster right now. I'm talking more from my throat. And there's this like, don't mess with me quality in that. So again, I pay attention to myself all the time. It's kind of annoying, but I can notice these subtle nuances in that shift. Or I can move into like, ooh, taking up space. Oh, my shoulders are rolling forward. My voice is slowing down. I'm noticing my eyes focus down a little bit. I'm wanting to hide, right? And, oh, okay. So there's these ways we show up in taking up space and in response to taking up space. Is it okay? Or is it entangled with the belief that I can't take up space because people won't like me, right? Or I'll say something stupid? Or is it taking up space mean that I have to have all my shit together, so I have to appear that way? There's so much that can be entangled in the idea of taking up space. So my invitation for those that want it is inquire. Like, what happens when you think about taking up space? If you think about, oh, okay, what's the initial response? Oh, all of a sudden I feel resistance and I just want to curl up and hide. Or, oh, nope, this feels good. And I can feel my whole body here and I feel connected to the ground and I'm aware of the environment and space around me and the people around me. And I feel like it's okay to be seen. Or, nope, actually I have to prove myself here and I need to fight a little. Right? What shows up for you to learn more? Like, what end of the spectrum are you falling into? And knowing that you can go in all directions, and depending on the situation, it might send you more into one thing versus the other. But again, it's just the opportunity to notice and become curious. How do I experience myself in this?
Yeah, and watch how quickly the mind will come in and like shame, like I can feel my shame, that voice there. And it's like, how can you just observe what is happening without putting a judgment on it? And that's like such a good practice to like continue to unravel. It's like, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what's happening, and I don't need to make it wrong or right.
Yeah. And then that question is, am I noticing it from that big circle of wholeness? And I can witness the shame. I can witness this survival pattern that wants to kick in. And I can witness all the parts while holding it. Or am I caught up in it in just a big entangled mess that I'm trying to navigate, which will also happen. It's not easy to just hang out in the wholeness and witness our parts and our experiences. Yeah. But again, it's information and we can recognize where we're at and then we can kind of explore from there.
Yes, it's so good. And I loved exploring with your group, and I'd love to talk about how when you're in community, it can almost take you to some deeper parts when you're held in a safe space and your nervous system's always mirroring everyone else's nervous system. So that's why it is important to, when you can, I don't know, maybe not use the word control, when you can choose to be around safe people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I mean, as human beings, we are tribal community, or we are tribal people, right? We are designed to be in community. We are designed to experience a sense of belonging, togetherness, unity, working as a team to contribute and to evolve and to move through this life as a human, right? And we've moved away from that big time. And trauma causes a disconnect from self and from others. So we live in a very traumatized world right now. So most people experience disconnect from self and from other people. And the idea of community is scary as hell. And I get that a lot of the time in my sales calls when I'm talking about the community aspect of Discover, people are like, ooh, I don't know about those weekly pod calls. Like, what? You want me to be seen? Hard no. Like, that's so uncomfortable. Yet it's such a valuable and important part of our healing, because the more we can recognize what it feels like to be held in a space of, I'm here with you. Like, I see you in your wholeness, and I'm here with you. There's nothing to fix. I'm here with you. The more we can experience that from other people, the more we can also hold that for other people, the more in turn we all benefit. I really believe that the world would be such a different place if we all knew how to just drop into, I'm here with you. I see you. Don't have anything to fix or change here. I'm just with you. I'm here with you. Like, that would, yeah, change the world. So to find the people that create that experience for you can be so valuable in the healing journey, because to heal trauma, we want to move through and be welcomed back into experiencing safety and connection. And that involves with other people. And if other people are too much, pets are incredible. Nature is incredible. And like, for me, take me to nature and whew, I can drop into some incredible places. And I'm personally still navigating the human connection and the intimacy and the vulnerability that comes with that. But it's such an important piece of the process. Like, how do we explore what it means to belong? How do we navigate landing back into, I'm truly safe and I belong here? Like, oh, that is, the core piece of our healing. And it takes time. And the more we can find our communities that can hold that space for us, that alone is powerful. You don't have to do much else. Be aware of your experience, be curious about wholeness, shift away from fixing, and just invite some exploration into who you really are while being seen and witnessed and held in community. Amazing.
It's the best feeling ever, I think. I just love that feeling so much, because being someone that didn't really experience that a lot, and even up to like past high school, like not even till college maybe, or even past college, like that feeling is so special, to just be yourself and not have someone judge you or like want to fix you. And I just have to ask one last question is, how can people practice that space holding without needing to fix? Because it's really uncomfortable to be like, it's uncomfortable process of not trying to provide any solutions or anything. And I think, we kind of shame people now about it. Or we say it's really masculine, like men do it a lot, but we all do it. And so, how can we practice that?
I think the recognition of the part that wants to fix, right? Or, I'm noticing there's a part of me that wants to offer up some advice right now. Is that available? Would you like it or not? Right? But at least that gives recognition for me, the space holder, recognizing the impulse to want to give advice. And it gives that person the opportunity to say yes or no. So I think just, again, the more we land in the big circle of wholeness and we recognize the little fragmentations that are like, I want to fix this right now, or I want to relate right now and really tell this person, like, I've been there, which has its time and place and can be really supportive. Right. So it's not like don't ever say anything and don't relate and don't offer advice. It's like, okay, how do I read the room? How do I sense what would be most supportive? How do I even inquire? Like, hey, I'm here with you, and I've been there. that alone could be enough, right? And recognize, oh, there's a part of me that wants to relate and say I've been there, and that's okay. Because I think there's also a lot of power in being seen. So I think it's the art of reading the room and co-regulating with each other and knowing like, "Ooh, okay, I'm here with you. You feel that? Okay, how can I support you now?" And for us to be aware of the parts that want to help, and are they wanting to help from more of a survival pattern, or are they genuinely wanting to help? I think that's the biggest differentiation is like, ooh, this is a survival pattern and I always love giving advice and fixing, versus no, this feels true and appropriate for right now, and it's coming from an authentic place of just like, I'm here with you, and here's a suggestion, here's an invitation, or I've been there, I can so relate, thanks for sharing. It's again,
Yeah,
flavor of where it comes from, right?
Yeah, and you can, once you even just saying that, like, I can hear people, like see people just thinking of the difference, and you can really feel it in those situations. And I think it's so beautiful that it always just comes down just like verbalizing what's happening, like, and for me, like, I can catch myself and in the middle of it be like, I am sorry, I am trying to fix you right now, and I would like to just listen now. And like, just even saying that is like, feels like the scariest thing alive, but it's like, no, it helps both parties when you can just like say what's happening on your end, and that allows them permission to like inquire about themselves. And anyways, there's so many things that's so beautiful.
So many things. Yeah, I love you bringing that up, because yeah, it's like I can name it, and now I'm showing my system something else is possible because I just named it and I got uncomfortable with that. And it just gave a bit of space for me to be human with you while you're navigating your thing, and we can continue on the conversation. It feels supportive for them, right? Like, yeah, it's a dance, this life thing, this being human thing, this dance of just getting to know ourselves and how we show up. And there is no right way. We're not going to get it perfect. We're going to fuck it up, and we're going to continuously be learning and evolving. That's for sure, if we're open to it.
Of course. And if someone is curious on maybe working more on this, definitely share all you're offering. And I highly recommend her programs for sure. And maybe like some other ways that people could access, maybe if they want like in person, like what's a good way to go about it?
Yeah, so best way would be either on Instagram. So my Instagram is at N and then my last name, NLOHSE. And then YouTube. My goal right now is to create a ton of free content, because the more people can know about this, the better. The more we can inquire from this perspective, the more people will realize what actually is happening when we support our nervous system instead of just implementing the tools. And there's also two free resources on my website. So one is the nervous system survival guide for you and your nervous system. And the other one is getting curious about your survival patterns around money, relationship, and purpose. 3 really big topics. Jam that into an hour, no problem. And then my 2 programs that I have are Discover and Explore. So Discover, I only run 1 or 2 times a year, and it's a 4-month commitment. And Explore is more of a self-study pace, but there's still a community aspect with monthly calls and workshops 3 times a year. And then, yeah, my intention is just to offer random workshops and dive deeper into more specific topics, like exploring anger. And I just ran a dating workshop, and, like to really have fun with getting to know ourselves from the nervous system perspective and apply it to life situations, because there's so much we can pay attention to when we're navigating life, and may as well have fun with it and do it with a community. So all my programs are very community based, and even the free webinars, when I do them live, it's a very community aspect. There's a big community aspect to it where it's like, hey, let's have conversations around this. Like, how about I don't just talk to a screen? No thanks. I want to be part of a conversation with you all too. So follow along, whatever interests you, sign up, and I would love to geek out with anyone who's interested.
Yay! Love. I hope everyone tries your work some point in their life. You're a beautiful teacher. And if people are looking for a local practitioner for themselves? Is there any way to get a good resource for that?
Yeah, I did create a video on YouTube on how to find a somatic experiencing practitioner. So somatic experiencing is the work of Peter Levine, and there's lots of practitioners out there that are trained in his modality. It's similar to yoga. Everyone is slightly different because they're going to come from different backgrounds and have different insights. So it's important to obviously do your research to find someone who resonates with you. But I talk about that in the video. And yeah, the one-on-one work can be super supportive. And I'm also love the educational and the self-explorational and the community aspects that come with programs. And sometimes both are important, or just one or the other, depending on what feels right for you. So explore, geek out. There's so much great content out there. So
Yay.
Explore it, but then discover how you can embody it.
Yeah, I was stuck on that for a long time of just learning, and not actually being any of it. So thanks for that reminder for everyone. And the last question of the podcast is, what's been bringing your heart joy lately? Which is funny that you actually said that at the beginning.
Yeah, right? The first thing that came to me is my niece and my nephew. They live right around the corner from me. They're 5 and 7. And when I'm with them, there's the reminder just to play and be. And it's just so simple, yet so important and so complex, because it's so easy to be lazy or be like, oh, you guys are so annoying. And it's that constant reminder of just like, why can't we just be having fun? Right. And navigate when there's complications, for sure. Like, yeah, there's some whining that happens, and there's some fighting that happens, and there's all kinds of interesting dynamics that are at play. But like, they just show us how to be humans, and it definitely brings me so much joy hanging out with them. In most states, I'll walk away a lot of the time when it's like, oh, it's not mine to deal with. But just the reminder of how to be free and how to just play. And my sister's done an incredible job just raising them in a way where they get to be their authentic self. So it's so beautiful to watch that.
Cute.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. They definitely still manipulate and have their survival patterns and have their ways of, I mean, we are all human, that's for sure.
Yeah. But it is so beautiful how they just always bring me to the present moment. I find too. It's like that's because that's all they are. They don't know they can't even tell you what a week is. They're like, they're
exactly.
Like, yeah.
Exactly. It's pretty great.
So beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing everything today. And can you just remind people where they can find you?
Yeah. Probably Instagram's the best bet. NLOHSE.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.